The Simpsons might be the most beloved animated sitcom in television history. Duh. Kawabunga. Eat my shorts! For over 35 years, this yellow family has made us laugh with their dysfunction, their catchphrases, and their satirical take on American life. But underneath all the couch gags and celebrity cameos, there's a disturbing side that most people don't want to talk about. Good one, Homer. But here's the thing. The Simpsons isn't just a wholesome family sitcom. For every episode about Homer's hijinks or Bart's pranks, there's another one that quietly traumatized an entire generation of viewers. Whether it's child abuse, psychological horror, or just plain existential dread, The Simpsons has delivered some truly terrifying moments over the years, often when we least expected them. People remember the Treehouse of Horror specials as the scary episodes, but honestly, some of the regular canon episodes are way more disturbing. We're talking about child slavery in France, cult indoctrination, characters being driven to suicide, and parents letting their kid get beaten by a foreign government. This stuff aired during family viewing hours on Fox, and it scarred people. What makes The Simpsons' dark episodes so effective is that they're hiding in plain sight. You tune in expecting satire and comedy, and suddenly you're watching Bart being forced to crush grapes barefoot while starving, or Homer discovering a rotting corpse as a child, or Frank Grimes having a complete mental breakdown that ends in his death. The show never warned you it was going there. It just went. In this video, we're diving deep into the most terrifying episodes in Simpsons history, both classic and modern eras. These aren't your typical Treehouse of Horror specials. These are canon episodes that took family entertainment into genuinely dark territory. From season 1's child abuse to modern season's home invasion horror, we're covering it all. Some of these episodes got complaints from parents. Some made kids have nightmares. Some dealt with topics so heavy that critics still debate whether they should have aired at all. But they did air, and they became part of Simpsons history, proving that animation could tackle seriously disturbing content while still being considered family entertainment. In this video, we're covering the most disturbing episode from multiple seasons of The Simpsons. But before we continue the video, make sure to like the video. You know what's crazy? Everyone remembers The Simpsons as that funny yellow family, but when you actually watch these episodes, you realize this show went to some genuinely dark places. Okay, so let's start with an episode from season 1 that's so disturbing, critics still debate whether it should have been made at all. Here's something that'll blow your mind. The Crepes of Wrath from season 1 is actually one of the darkest things The Simpsons ever put on television. Everyone remembers it as that episode where Bart goes to France and learns French, but they're missing the real story here. This is an episode about child slavery, physical abuse, and exploitation that aired in 1990 during prime family viewing time. And honestly, critics still debate whether it should have been made at all. The episode starts innocently enough. Bart pulls his usual pranks, this time flushing a cherry bomb down the school toilet. Unfortunately, Principal Skinner's mother happens to be using the girls' bathroom at the exact same time. The explosion launches her off the toilet seat, and Skinner decides Bart has transcended incorrigible. He suggests something radical: deportation. Not expulsion, not suspension, but actually sending Bart out of the country through a student exchange program. Picture this. You're a 10-year-old kid being shipped off to France. Bart's excited because he thinks he's going to stay in a fancy French chateau, live with a nice family, and have an adventure. The reality is completely different, and when you actually watch what happens to our boy, this episode is straight up traumatic. Bart arrives and meets his host family, Caesar and Ugolin, two criminals running a vineyard who immediately confiscate all of Bart's belongings. They take his suitcase, his clothes, everything he brought from home. Then they put him to work. Not chores, not helping out. Actual slave labor. The thing that gets me is how brutal it becomes. Bart is forced to crush grapes with his bare feet for hours. He's given minimal food while Caesar and Ugolin eat full meals in front of him. They make him sleep on a cold floor instead of a bed. He's carrying heavy water buckets that a child his size shouldn't be lifting. This isn't an exaggeration for comedy. The animators show Bart exhausted, dirty, and genuinely suffering. But here's where it gets really messed up. Caesar and Ugolin are adulterating their wine with antifreeze to make it age faster. Antifreeze. The stuff that kills people. And they force Bart to drink it to prove it won't hurt anyone. Think about that for a second. These men are poisoning a child to test their toxic product. That's attempted murder disguised as quality control. What makes this episode so disturbing is watching Bart slowly break down. At first, he tries to stay optimistic, but you can see the hope draining from his eyes. He walks through the village in rags, looking like a homeless orphan, desperately trying to find help. When a police officer approaches him, Bart can't communicate because he doesn't speak French. The officer just gives him a piece of candy and walks away, not understanding that this child is being abused right in front of him. The episode tries to have a happy ending. Bart suddenly realizes he's learned French through immersion and reports the criminals to the police. He becomes a hero, gets sent home, and everything's fine. But think about the trauma Bart just went through. He spent months being exploited, starved, and poisoned by adults who were supposed to care for him. That changes a person. Here's the thing that makes this episode genuinely disturbing. This stuff happens in real life. Child trafficking, forced labor, exploitation by host families. The Simpsons took actual horror and played it for laughs, wrapping child abuse in cartoon comedy. James L. Brooks called this his favorite episode, and critics praised it for its audacity. But watch it through adult eyes and you'll see something genuinely uncomfortable. A child suffering and nobody helping him for months. The Crepes of Wrath shows physical abuse from strangers Bart was forced to trust. But Some Enchanted Evening proves it's even more terrifying when danger comes from someone your parents willingly invited into your home. Some Enchanted Evening was actually produced as The Simpsons' very first full-length episode. If this had aired first like planned, the show might not have made it past season 1. This episode is legitimately terrifying because it taps into every parent's worst nightmare. Leaving your kids with a stranger who wants to hurt them. The setup seems normal enough. Homer forgets his anniversary with Marge and she's devastated. She calls into a radio psychology show, basically admitting her marriage is falling apart. When Homer hears this, he panics and tries to make it up to her with a fancy night out. They need a babysitter, so they hire someone from an agency. Miss Botts arrives at their door. She seems professional at first. Polite, experienced, all the right credentials. Homer and Marge leave feeling confident their kids are in good hands. But the second the parents drive away, everything changes. Bart and Lisa are watching TV when they see America's Most Armed and Dangerous, their version of America's Most Wanted. And right there on the screen is their babysitter. The babysitter bandit. A woman who breaks into homes, robs families, and has been known to hurt children. She's wanted by police across multiple states. The kids realize they're trapped in their own house with a violent criminal. When Miss Botts discovers they know her identity, she doesn't leave. She doesn't run. She attacks them. What makes this scene genuinely disturbing is how quickly the power dynamic shifts. These are children, and this adult woman physically overpowers them. She ties them up with rope, binds them to a chair, and starts ransacking their house right in front of them. Bart and Lisa can't move, can't escape, can't call for help. They're completely helpless while this woman methodically steals everything valuable in their home. The way she threatens them is chilling. There's no cartoon exaggeration here. She's cold, calculating, and makes it clear that if they cause problems, things will get worse for them. This is a home invasion happening to children while their parents are out having a romantic dinner, completely unaware. Homer and Marge come home early, and you think everything's going to be fine. But then something infuriating happens. Homer sees Miss Botts and assumes she's still just the nice babysitter. Even when Bart and Lisa try to explain she's a criminal, he doesn't listen. He pays her, thanks her for her service, and lets her walk out the door with their possessions and the babysitting money. The kids finally show him the TV news report. Homer realizes his mistake and chases her down. He catches her, ties her up, and calls the police. Victory, right? Wrong. When the cops arrive and Homer goes to check on Ms. Botts, she's gone. He let her escape. Again, the family watches helplessly as she drives away in the news van, still at large, still dangerous. Here's what makes Some Enchanted Evening so unsettling. This isn't supernatural horror or sci-fi weirdness. This is a realistic crime that happens to real families. Home invasions, criminals posing as service workers, children left vulnerable with strangers. The episode aired in 1990, and parents were genuinely upset that a family cartoon would depict something so frightening. The animation in this episode was famously rough, which is why it got bumped from being the pilot. But honestly, that roughness makes it scarier. Everything looks slightly off, slightly wrong, which adds to the unsettling atmosphere. This was meant to introduce audiences to The Simpsons, and instead it traumatized kids who weren't expecting genuine menace in their cartoon. If a violent babysitter is nightmare fuel, then Cape Fear takes it even further with Sideshow Bob's elaborate plan to murder a 10-year-old child. Everyone loves Cape Fear because of the rake gag and Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes for 2 minutes straight. But honestly, when you actually watch what Bob tries to do to Bart, this episode is a straight-up thriller about attempted child murder. Sideshow Bob literally writes death threats in his own blood and has Die Bart Die tattooed on his chest. The episode opens with Bart receiving threatening letters written in blood. Not red ink, actual blood. Bob's blood. Think about the level of obsession it takes to repeatedly cut yourself open just to terrorize a child through the mail. When the police track Bob down in prison, they find walls covered in Bart's name, drawings of Bart being murdered, and that massive chest tattoo that reads, Die, Bart, die. But here's where Sideshow Bob shows just how intelligent and manipulative he really is. He manages to get himself released on parole by completely charming the review board. He's educated, articulate, performs high culture opera, and convinces everyone he's reformed. When someone points out the threatening letters and the murder tattoo, Bob claims the tattoo is German. As in, no one who speaks German could be an evil man. The board buys it and sets him free. The moment Bob gets out, he starts stalking Bart. Under the Simpsons car, Bob rides along gripping the undercarriage like something out of a horror movie. At the movie theater, Bob sits behind Bart laughing menacingly. Everywhere Bart goes, Bob appears, making sure Bart knows he's being hunted. What makes this episode genuinely terrifying is how patient Bob is. He doesn't just attack Bart on the street. He follows the family for days, learning their routines, waiting for the perfect moment. The suspense builds like an actual thriller. Every shadow could be Bob. Every sound could be him getting closer. The Simpson family realizes they need protection and enters witness protection. They get new identities and are relocated to a houseboat as the Thompson family. They think they're safe. They're not. Bob finds them anyway. He tracks them down to their remote location and corners them on the houseboat in the middle of nowhere. This is where the episode shifts from comedy into legitimate horror. Bob ties up Homer, Marge, and the kids. He has them completely at his mercy. There's no one around to help. No police coming to save them. Just Bob, a knife, and his plan to finally kill Bart. The scene where Bob corners Bart on the deck is genuinely disturbing. Bob doesn't just want to kill Bart quickly. He wants to savor it. He delivers this long villain monologue explaining exactly how he's going to murder this child, why he's going to enjoy it, and how he's thought about this moment every day for years. Bart is 10 years old, tied up, with a grown man holding a knife to his throat, and that man is explaining in detail how he'll commit the murder. Bart manages to outsmart Bob by asking him to sing the entire score of HMS Pinafore, which Bob can't resist because of his theatrical ego. By the time Bob finishes performing, the houseboat has drifted back to Springfield and the police are waiting. But even in defeat, Bob's rage is terrifying. He's not embarrassed or regretful. He's furious that he didn't get to kill Bart. Cape Fear works as comedy because Kelsey Grammer's performance is so theatrical and over the top. The rake gag is hilarious. But strip away the humor and you have a story about an adult male with murder weapons stalking a child for days, cornering him in isolation, and attempting to kill him while his family watches helplessly. That's not satire. That's a psychological thriller that belongs on primetime drama, not Sunday night Fox animation. Sideshow Bob brings external terror to the Simpsons world, hunting them from outside. But The Joy of Sect shows how easy it is to destroy a family from the inside through psychological manipulation and cult indoctrination. Imagine you're watching a family sitcom and suddenly it turns into a documentary about cult manipulation that's so accurate, religious scholars use it in academic papers. That's The Joy of Sect. This episode doesn't just joke about cults. It shows exactly how they work, how they break people down, and how they destroy families. And it's genuinely unsettling to watch. The episode starts at the airport. The Simpsons are walking to their car when they're approached by members of the Movementarians. Friendly people offering a free weekend at a beautiful retreat. Homer's skeptical at first, but they're persistent. This is classic cult recruitment. Target families in transitional spaces, offer something free, seem non-threatening. At the Movementarian compound, everything seems wonderful initially. Beautiful grounds, happy people, free food. Then they're shown a film about their beliefs. The leader, an alien being who will take all faithful followers to a planet called Blistonia. The presentation uses every psychological trick in the book. Repetitive messaging, emotional music, social pressure from everyone around them agreeing. Homer resists. He's not buying into this obvious scam, but the cult is patient. They separate him from his family and start working on him individually. Sleep deprivation, constant propaganda, social isolation. They wear him down day by day, hour by hour, until Homer's resistance breaks. When he finally agrees to join, you can see something die in his eyes. His free will is gone. Here's where the episode becomes truly disturbing. The family gives everything to the cult. Their house, their possessions, all their money. They move to the Movementarian compound and lose their autonomy completely. The family is split up into different work groups. Homer rarely sees Marge. Bart and Lisa are separated from their parents and assigned to children's facilities. They work grueling hours doing manual labor, building a structure they're told is the spaceship that will take them to paradise. They're exhausted, malnourished, and completely cut off from the outside world. Every moment is controlled. When they eat, when they sleep, what they think. This isn't satire anymore. This is an accurate depiction of cult control. The thing that gets me most is watching Marge's transformation. She's usually the voice of reason, the one who keeps the family grounded. But the Movementarians break her too. She becomes completely indoctrinated, repeating their phrases, defending the cult against her own children when Bart and Lisa try to reason with her. Seeing Marge lost like that is heartbreaking. Bart and Lisa maintain some clarity because they're younger and more skeptical. They see through the manipulation, but they're powerless to help their parents. Homer's been isolated in a special brainwashing facility where he's subjected to constant propaganda. They've taken away everything that made him Homer. His beer, his TV, his freedom, his family. They're systematically destroying his identity to rebuild him as a loyal follower. The episode shows exactly how cults operate in reality. The love bombing at first, then the isolation from support systems, the surrender of possessions creating financial dependence, the separation of family members so they can't support each other, the exhausting labor that breaks down resistance, the repetitive messaging that replaces independent thought. This isn't exaggerated for comedy. These are actual techniques documented by cult researchers. What makes The Joy of Sect genuinely scary is realizing how easily it happened. The Simpsons are a normal family, and within days they were completely absorbed into the system. Homer and Marge nearly lost themselves forever. The episode eventually reveals the leader as a charlatan and the family escapes. But the psychological damage of what they experience doesn't just disappear. Religious scholars have analyzed this episode extensively because it's one of the most accurate depictions of cult dynamics in popular media. The writers researched Heaven's Gate, People's Temple, Scientology, and other organizations to capture how these groups actually function. The result is an episode that's funny on the surface, but deeply disturbing underneath. The Joy of Sect shows adults losing their free will to manipulation. But My Sitter goes even darker by showing a child deliberately harming himself just to destroy his sister's reputation. Okay, let's talk about the episode from season 8 that made parents write complaint letters to Fox. My Sitter is remembered for Lisa's babysitting disaster. But everyone forgets the absolutely insane part where Bart deliberately gives himself a traumatic brain injury out of pure spite. We're not talking about cartoon violence here. We're talking about a child committing serious self-harm, and the show plays it for comedy. Lisa decides to start a babysitting business after reading books about teenage babysitters. She's successful with other families, impressing everyone with her responsibility and competence. Eventually, Homer and Marge decide to leave her in charge of Bart and Maggie while they attend the grand opening of the new Squidport entertainment complex. Bart is absolutely enraged. His younger sister is being put in charge of him. The authority structure is inverted, and he can't handle it. From the moment their parents leave, Bart declares war on Lisa's babysitting career. The prank starts small. Bart refuses to go to bed, acts like a baby at dinner, makes a mess. Standard annoying brother behavior. But then he escalates dramatically. He orders a 25-foot Italian party sub to the house. He calls emergency services claiming Lisa spotted a UFO. He summons Krusty the Clown for an emergency bachelor party. Each prank is designed to humiliate Lisa and make her look incompetent. Lisa's frustration builds throughout the night. She's trying so hard to prove she's responsible, and Bart is systematically destroying everything. When Bart starts bouncing on their parents' bed after Lisa told him to go to bed, she snaps. She chases him through the house in anger. That's when the accident happens. Bart falls down the stairs hard. He dislocates his shoulder and gets a massive bump on his head. Lisa immediately wants to take him to the hospital, but Bart realizes something. If his parents see him injured while Lisa was babysitting, her reputation will be destroyed. She'll never be allowed to babysit again. And that's exactly what he wants. Here's where it crosses every line. Bart locks himself in his room. Lisa's begging him to let her help, to go to the hospital, to do something. But Bart has a better idea. He takes his already injured head and repeatedly bashes it against his bedroom door, over and over, making the injury worse on purpose, creating more swelling, more damage. He does this until he knocks himself completely unconscious. Let that sink in. A child looked at his injury and thought, how can I make this worse to hurt my sister more? Then he methodically gave himself a concussion severe enough to render him unconscious. This isn't a prank. This isn't cartoon violence where characters recover instantly. This is deliberate self-mutilation motivated by spite. Lisa panics. She can't call an ambulance because of Bart's earlier prank calls. The 911 operators think it's another joke and refuse to help. She can't go to Dr. Hibbert because that would expose what happened. So she loads unconscious Bart into a wheelbarrow, puts an overstimulated Maggie in a pet carrier, and starts wheeling them across town to Dr. Nick's clinic. The journey becomes a nightmare. Lisa loses control of the wheelbarrow near the Squidport opening where her parents and the entire town are gathered. Everyone sees Lisa with her unconscious brother and caged baby sister. Dr. Hibbert examines Bart right there and announces to the crowd that these injuries are the result of bad babysitting. Lisa's reputation is destroyed publicly. What makes this episode genuinely disturbing is that Bart's behavior goes beyond anything he's done before. Bart and Lisa fight constantly, but they also love each other. They protect each other when it matters. But in this episode, Bart's hatred of being babysat by his younger sister drove him to commit serious self-harm. The message is horrifying. A child would rather severely injure himself than let his sister succeed. The next day, Bart apologizes, admitting he made everything worse on purpose. Lisa's reputation gets restored, but the damage is done. We watched a character we've known for years deliberately bash his own head against a door until he lost consciousness. That image doesn't go away just because he says sorry. Bart's self-harm is disturbing, but at least it was impulsive rage. Homer's enemy is somehow worse because it shows a good man being slowly driven insane by circumstances beyond his control until he kills himself. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Homer's enemy is the episode where The Simpsons stopped being a comedy and became a tragedy. Most people remember it as that episode with Grimy, but what actually happens is we watch a good, hard-working man have a complete mental breakdown and accidentally kill himself. And the show treats it like a joke. Frank Grimes is introduced as someone who struggled his entire life. Abandoned as a child, lived on the streets, put himself through school working terrible jobs, survived explosions that left him with permanent injuries. He's worked incredibly hard for every tiny achievement. He finally gets hired at the nuclear power plant, thinking maybe his luck is changing. Then he meets Homer Simpson, and everything Frank Grimes believes about fairness and justice completely falls apart. Homer is incompetent at his job. He barely understands basic safety procedures. He sleeps at work, causes accidents, and shows zero interest in improving himself. By every logical standard, Homer should be fired or at minimum stuck in the lowest position. Instead, Homer has a corner office, the respect of his coworkers, and Mr. Burns occasionally even knows his name. What destroys Frank isn't just Homer's incompetence. It's that Homer has everything Frank wanted: a nice house in a good neighborhood, a loving wife and 3 healthy children, friends who genuinely like him, stability and comfort. Homer got all of this despite being lazy and careless. Frank worked himself half to death and has nothing. No family, no home he can afford, no friends, no recognition for his efforts. The injustice eats away at Frank's sanity. He tries to expose Homer's incompetence to everyone at work. He points out all the disasters Homer has caused, all the times he's failed. But nobody cares. They like Homer. He's fun, he's friendly, he makes them laugh. Frank's competence and hard work don't matter. Likability beats merit every single time. Frank becomes obsessed. He challenges Homer to a children's science fair contest to prove Homer knows nothing. But Homer wins because Bart built his entire project for him. Even when Frank tries to demonstrate how little Homer deserves his success, the universe rewards Homer anyway. That's when Frank Grimes completely snaps. He has a breakdown right there in the power plant. He starts acting like Homer, deliberately being careless and incompetent. He runs around touching things he shouldn't, ignoring safety protocols, doing everything Homer does every day without consequences. Then he touches high-voltage wires and electrocutes himself to death. At Frank's funeral, Homer falls asleep and starts talking in his dreams. Everyone laughs. They're laughing at a funeral for a man who was driven to suicide by the unfairness of his life. That final scene is one of the darkest moments in television history. Here's what makes Homer's enemy genuinely disturbing. Frank Grimes is right about everything. Homer is incompetent. He doesn't deserve his good life. The world is unfair. Hard work doesn't guarantee success. Sometimes terrible people prosper while good people suffer. The episode doesn't refute Frank's worldview. It confirms it, then kills him for having the audacity to point out the truth. This episode is existential horror. It's about realizing the universe doesn't care about fairness or justice or hard work. It's about watching someone who played by all the rules lose to someone who ignores them. Frank's death isn't heroic or meaningful. It's pointless and sad, and everyone moves on immediately. The Simpsons usually celebrates Homer despite his flaws. Homer's enemy does the opposite. It shows Homer through the eyes of someone who rightfully sees him as an undeserving fool. And that perspective is so accurate and so devastating that it literally kills the person who holds it. That's not comedy. That's nihilistic tragedy disguised as a sitcom. What makes it even more disturbing is that this episode aired in 1997 during The Simpsons' golden age. The show was at its creative peak, and they chose to make an episode about a good man being destroyed by cosmic unfairness. It's brilliant, but it's also genuinely depressing in a way that sticks with you. Frank Grimes faces unfairness in adult life, but Dial In for Nerder shows children facing something even worse. The crushing guilt of believing they've accidentally murdered their friend. After a prank gone wrong in Dial In for Nerder, Bart and Lisa think they've accidentally killed Martin and spend the rest of the episode trying to deal with the guilt. And honestly, watching two children believe they're murderers for 20 minutes is genuinely disturbing television. The episode starts with Bart and Lisa playing a prank on Martin Prince during a class field trip to Springfield's National Park. They convince him he's discovered an ancient artifact, then reveal it's fake. Martin's humiliation turns to anger, and he chases them to the edge of a cliff. That's when things go horribly wrong. During the confrontation, Martin loses his balance and falls off the cliff. Bart and Lisa watch him tumble down, hitting rocks and branches on the way. They rush to the bottom and find Martin lying motionless in the mud. No movement. No breathing. They check for a pulse and find nothing. Picture this. You're a child and you just watched your classmate die because of your prank. That's the psychological weight Bart and Lisa carry for the entire episode. They genuinely believe they've killed someone, and the show lets that horror play out in detail. What makes this episode so dark is watching how Bart and Lisa process their guilt. They can't tell anyone what happened. If they confess, they'll go to juvenile detention or possibly prison, so they make a pact to keep it secret forever. Two children agreeing to cover up what they think is a murder, the guilt manifests differently in each of them. Bart becomes paranoid, jumping at every sound, convinced the police are coming for him. Lisa's guilt is more internalized. She can't sleep, can't eat, can't concentrate. The weight of believing she caused someone's death is crushing her from the inside. Nelson Muntz somehow figures out what happened and starts investigating like a detective. He interrogates Bart and Lisa separately, poking holes in their stories, applying psychological pressure. Watching Nelson, the school bully, become the moral authority while Bart and Lisa spiral into panic creates this twisted dynamic that's uncomfortable to watch. The really messed up part is how the episode treats this like a murder mystery. There are red herrings, false leads, mounting evidence, but underneath all the detective story mechanics is the reality that two children believe they're responsible for another child's death. That's trauma that would require years of therapy. Here's what gets me about this episode. The show never lets Bart and Lisa off the hook emotionally. Even when you suspect Martin might be alive, Bart and Lisa don't know that. They spend the episode in genuine psychological torment. The fear in their voices feels real. The panic attacks feel real. The crushing weight of guilt feels real. Eventually, Nelson discovers Martin alive and well, having survived the fall. Bart and Lisa are relieved but also angry that Martin let them suffer. The episode tries to end on a lighter note, but the emotional damage is already done. These kids spent days thinking they were murderers, making plans to hide evidence, lying to their parents. That experience doesn't just disappear because Martin's alive. Dial and for Nerder is disturbing because it forces child characters to confront genuinely adult consequences. Murder, guilt, cover-ups, criminal investigation. These aren't topics most family sitcoms touch, and certainly not with this level of psychological realism. The episode commits to showing what believing you've killed someone would actually do to a child's mental state. What's particularly unsettling is that this aired in season 19, long past The Simpsons' golden age. By this point, the show had a reputation for being softer, less edgy. Then they release an episode about children processing murder guilt. It proved the show could still go to genuinely dark places even in its later years. From accidental death to deliberate cruelty, 201 Greyhounds shows Mr. Burns at his most villainous, plotting to murder puppies and turn them into coats. 201 Greyhounds from season 6 is The Simpsons' version of 101 Dalmatians, except way darker and more disturbing than Disney ever dared to go. Mr. Burns doesn't just want to make coats out of puppies. He points a gun at children and considers murdering them to cover his tracks. The episode begins sweetly enough. Santa's little helper falls in love with a racing greyhound named She's the Fastest. They have puppies together. 25 adorable puppies that the Simpson family absolutely loves. Then one night, Mr. Burns and Smithers break into the Simpson home and steal all the puppies. When I say steal, I mean they literally kidnap 24 newborn animals from a family's house in the middle of the night. That's already pretty dark for a cartoon. But Burns' motivation makes it infinitely worse. Mr. Burns wants to kill the puppies and make their fur into a tuxedo. Not a coat, a tuxedo. He plans to skin 25 baby animals to create a fancy outfit for himself. The episode shows him measuring the puppies, calculating how many he'll need, selecting which ones have the best fur. This is premeditated mass puppy murder. Bart and Lisa track Burns down to his mansion. They sneak inside and discover a horrific scene. All 25 puppies are trapped in a pen while Burns and Smithers prepare to kill them. The tools for skinning are laid out. Everything is ready. Burns is literally minutes away from committing this atrocity. Here's where the episode crosses into legitimately frightening territory. Burns discovers Bart and Lisa spying on him. Instead of letting them go or trying to explain himself, he pulls out a gun. A real gun, and he points it directly at two children while considering whether to murder them. Think about that for a second. A billionaire is standing in his mansion holding a weapon aimed at a 10-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl, seriously debating whether to shoot them to protect his puppy murdering scheme. That's not cartoon villainy. That's genuine psychopathic behavior. The only reason Burns doesn't pull the trigger is that the puppies start performing tricks. Burns becomes enchanted by their cuteness and decides to keep them as pets instead of coats. Bart and Lisa are spared not because Burns had a change of heart about murdering children, but because he got distracted by something more entertaining. What makes this episode genuinely disturbing is how casually it treats violence toward children and animals. Burns threatens to kill Bart and Lisa like it's a minor inconvenience. The episode plays it for laughs, but there's nothing funny about an adult aiming a loaded weapon at kids. Even in animation, that image is deeply unsettling. The puppy murder plot is clearly borrowed from Cruella de Vil, but The Simpsons makes it darker. Cruella was a cartoon villain whose evil plan was always going to be foiled. Burns is shown as completely serious about his plan. He's done this kind of thing before. He's prepared to do it again. Only random chance saved those puppies. The episode tries to have a happy ending with the puppies being saved and most of them finding good homes. But that gun-pointing scene lingers. We saw Mr. Burns seriously consider murdering 2 children to hide evidence of puppy murder. That's a level of evil that's hard to come back from, even for a character who's been villainous throughout the series. 201 Greyhounds also features one of the darkest songs in Simpsons history. Burns and Smithers sing See My Vest, a parody of Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast. But the lyrics detail all the different animals Burns has killed and turned into clothing. Greyhound fur, gorilla chest, poodle on his noodle. It's a catchy tune about murder and wearing corpses. After Burns threatens children with a gun over puppies, the Blunder Years digs into something even more psychologically scarring. Homer's repressed childhood trauma involving a rotting corpse. Homer gets hypnotized in season 13's The Blunder Years, and it awakens a repressed trauma. When he was a kid, Homer and his friends went down to the quarry to swim in the water, but found the water pipe blocked. When Homer unblocked it, a rotting corpse washed out into his lap. And the episode shows this in graphic detail. The setup seems innocent. The family goes to a restaurant that features a hypnotist as entertainment. The hypnotist brings Homer on stage and successfully puts him in a trance. But instead of making him cluck like a chicken or do something silly, the hypnosis accidentally unlocks a deeply traumatic memory that Homer's brain buried for decades. Homer starts screaming, not cartoon screaming, genuine anguished screaming that goes on for minutes. He screams so loud and so long that everyone in the restaurant covers their ears. He screams all the way home. He screams through the night. He's having a complete psychological breakdown triggered by whatever memory just surfaced. The family realizes Homer experienced something horrible as a child, something so traumatic his mind completely blocked it out. They decide to investigate, talking to people who knew young Homer, trying to piece together what happened. The mystery structure makes this feel less like a sitcom and more like a psychological thriller. Eventually, they figure it out. When Homer was 12 years old, he and his friends went swimming in the old quarry. The water pipe was blocked with debris, so being kids, they decided to clear it. Homer pulled away the blockage, and suddenly water started gushing out. And then something else came out with the water. A decomposing human corpse, fully rotted, falling apart, covered in sewage. It burst out of the pipe and landed directly on young Homer, covering him in decay and filth. The body had been trapped in there for months, slowly rotting in the water system. And Homer was the one who released it, getting an eyeful and armful of this nightmare. The flashback scene is genuinely horrifying. The animation shows the corpse in detail. Exposed bones, decaying flesh, empty eye sockets. This isn't suggested or implied. They show it. On a family cartoon at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night, they animated a rotting human corpse landing on a child. What makes the Blunder Years so disturbing is understanding how that experience would destroy a kid's psyche. Homer was 12, old enough to fully comprehend what he was seeing, young enough to be completely traumatized by it. The image of that corpse became so horrific that his brain literally erased it from his conscious memory to protect him. But here's what makes it even darker. The corpse turns out to be Waylon Smithers' father, who died heroically preventing a nuclear meltdown at the power plant. He was a good man who sacrificed himself to save everyone, but his body was disposed of by Mr. Burns in the most callous way possible, dumped in the water system like trash. That's how Burns treats even his loyal employees. Even in death, there's no dignity or respect. The episode tries to provide closure. They recover the body properly, give Smithers' father a real burial, and Homer gets to process the trauma with his family's support. But that doesn't erase what he experienced. A child came face to face with death in the most visceral way possible. That image is now in Homer's head forever, even if he tried to forget it once. The Blunder Years is disturbing because it treats childhood trauma seriously. This isn't played entirely for laughs. Homer's breakdown is portrayed as genuine psychological damage. The corpse isn't cartoonish or silly. It's realistically horrifying. The episode acknowledges that some experiences are so terrible they can break your mind, and sometimes the only way to survive them is to forget they ever happened. Where Homer faces the physical horror of death, Bart sells his soul explore something more existentially terrifying, the possibility that selling your identity means losing yourself forever. Bart sells. His soul from season 7 explores the notion taught by all religions that everyone has a soul separate from their body. Bart sells his soul to Milhouse for $5 to prove souls don't exist, then begins to experience strange occurrences like the Quickie Mart's automatic doors not opening for him. The episode's darkest element is Bart's recurring nightmares, in which he sees all his friends canoeing to paradise with their souls, while he struggles to row his boat alone. The episode starts with Bart pulling a prank at church, replacing the hymnal music with Inagata Davida by Iron Butterfly. When the congregation starts unknowingly singing heavy metal lyrics, Reverend Lovejoy is furious. He lectures Bart about souls and morality, insisting that every person has an eternal soul. Bart doesn't believe in souls. He thinks it's superstitious nonsense. To prove his point, he writes Bart's soul on a piece of paper and sells it to Milhouse for $5. It's just a joke, just a way to make money off Milhouse's gullibility. But then weird things start happening. The automatic doors at the Quickie Mart don't open for Bart. He has to wait for someone else to trigger them. His dog Santa's little helper, who usually loves him, suddenly acts afraid and distant. The family pet won't come near him like it senses something wrong. Bart tries to laugh it off, but you can see him getting worried. Then come the nightmares. Bart dreams he's on a boat trying to reach an island paradise where all his friends are gathered. Lisa, Milhouse, Nelson, everyone. They're all together, happy and whole. But Bart is alone on a separate boat, struggling to row. His friends are moving forward easily while Bart can barely make progress. And when he looks at their boats, he sees glowing forms sitting with them. Their souls. Bart's boat has no soul, just empty space where his should be. He rows and rows but gets nowhere. He calls out to his friends, but they don't hear him. He's trapped in isolation while everyone he knows moves forward together. That image of Bart alone on a boat, surrounded by darkness, unable to reach the light where his friends are gathered, is genuinely haunting. What makes this episode psychologically disturbing is how it plays on existential dread. The fear that you're fundamentally broken, that you've damaged yourself beyond repair, that you're separate from everyone else in some irreversible way. Bart starts to genuinely believe he's sold something essential and can't get it back. He becomes desperate. He tries to buy his soul back from Milhouse, but Milhouse has already sold it to Comic Book Guy. Bart tracks it down only to discover Comic Book Guy sold it to someone else. The paper that represents Bart's soul keeps changing hands, and Bart has no way to reclaim it. His identity, his essence, is out there somewhere, and he can't find it. The psychological torture builds. Bart can't sleep. Every night brings the same nightmare of isolation and separation. During the day, small things keep going wrong. Nothing catastrophic, just constant reminders that something about him is different now, wrong somehow. He's marked by his choice, and there's no escaping it. Lisa eventually helps Bart get his soul back through a combination of compassion and trickery. But the episode doesn't just dismiss what Bart went through. The experience fundamentally shook him. He learned that some things shouldn't be sold, that certain boundaries exist for a reason, that mockingly disposing of your identity can have real psychological consequences even if they're not literally supernatural. Bart sells his soul is disturbing because it taps into the fear of losing yourself, of making a choice that can't be undone, of being separated from humanity through your own actions. That's horror that works on adults and children for different reasons, and that's what makes it stick with you long after the episode ends. After stealing the newly struck oil out from under Springfield Elementary, Mr. Burns decides to make the town dependent on his electric lights by blocking out the sun. As these sinister plans unfold, the second half of Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1 takes on the atmosphere of a science fiction horror story. And honestly, the dystopian nightmare Burns creates is more disturbing than most actual dystopian films. The episode starts with Springfield Elementary discovering oil on their property. Finally, the underfunded school has money for arts programs, teacher salaries, and basic maintenance. Everyone's celebrating this windfall. Then Mr. Burns shows up and uses legal loopholes to steal the oil, drilling slantwise from his property to tap their reserve. The school loses everything and Burns gets richer. But that's not enough for him. Burns becomes obsessed with the idea that people are using free sunlight instead of buying electricity from his power plant. He's losing money because the sun exists, so he decides to fix that problem permanently. Burns constructs a massive device that blocks out the sun. Not partially, completely. He literally engineers a way to cast Springfield in permanent darkness, forcing every resident to rely on his power company for light and warmth. This is cartoon supervillainy taken to its logical extreme, but the horror comes from how seriously the episode plays it. When the device activates, Springfield goes dark at noon. The sun disappears behind Burns' construction, plunging the entire town into twilight. People stumble around confused, plants start dying, the temperature drops. Burns has created an artificial winter, an endless night, and everyone is trapped in it. What makes this genuinely terrifying is the power dynamic. One man, because he's wealthy enough, has literally stolen daylight from an entire population. He's holding the sun hostage for profit. That's not just evil, that's apocalyptic. Burns has become a god-tier threat, someone who can remake the environment itself to suit his greed. The psychological horror builds throughout the second half. People realize what's happened and start panicking. Their world has fundamentally changed in an instant. Springfield feels like a post-apocalyptic wasteland, even though technically nothing's been destroyed. The sun is still up there somewhere, they just can't see it anymore. They're living in artificial darkness, completely dependent on Burns for survival. Homer has his own breakdown during this episode, but for different reasons. Mr. Burns keeps forgetting Homer's name, calling him everything except Homer. After years of working at the plant, Burns still doesn't know who he is. This breaks something in Homer. His identity crisis mixed with the town's literal crisis creates this atmosphere of everything falling apart simultaneously. The episode includes a genuinely effective jump scare with Grandpa Simpson. He bursts through a door unexpectedly, making even viewers jump. It's a small moment, but it contributes to the overall sense of unease and unpredictability. Nothing feels safe or stable anymore. Then comes the cliffhanger. Someone shoots Mr. Burns. The episode ends with him lying in the town square, gravely wounded, and everyone in Springfield has a motive. The sun is still blocked. The crisis isn't resolved. Burns might die, or he might survive and make things even worse. The town is left in darkness, both literal and figurative. Who shot Mr. Burns? Part 1 is disturbing because it shows environmental catastrophe as a deliberate choice. Burns doesn't accidentally cause harm, he engineers it for profit. He looks at the natural world and decides it's inconvenient for his business model, so he changes it. The entitlement and cruelty required to think that way is genuinely scary. The episode aired as a season finale, meaning viewers had to wait months to find out what happened. They spent summer 1995 with the image of Springfield trapped in permanent darkness, their town destroyed by one man's greed. That's psychological horror that extends beyond the episode itself. If Burns' calculated cruelty represents human evil, El viaje misterioso de nuestro Homer shows how the mind itself can become a terrifying landscape when pushed to its limits. Season 8's El viaje misterioso de nuestro Homer, translated to The Mysterious Voyage of Homer, features some of the most gonzo, surrealistic animation in the show's history. After ingesting a couple of Guatemalan insanity peppers at Springfield's chili cook-off, Homer runs off into the desert where he's subjected to some soul-searching hallucinations. He's attacked by a giant butterfly, he meets a space coyote with the voice of Johnny Cash, and he sees grotesque reimaginings of familiar characters with extra eyes and rippling lips. The episode starts at the annual chili cook-off. Everyone in town has entered their best recipes, and naturally there's competition to create the spiciest chili possible. Chief Wiggum brings peppers grown by inmates at the state prison using dangerous fertilizer. These aren't normal peppers. They're Guatemalan insanity peppers, so hot they cause hallucinations. Marge warns Homer not to eat them. She knows he'll go overboard, knows he'll hurt himself trying to prove how tough he is. But Homer can't resist a challenge. He takes several bites despite everyone telling him to stop. The peppers are so hot that Homer's immediate reaction is to drink a full canister of wax, thinking it's water. His mouth is literally melting. Then the hallucinations begin. And this is where the episode transforms into something genuinely unsettling. Homer runs into the desert in a panic. The animation style shifts dramatically. Everything becomes fluid and dreamlike. Reality melts away, and Homer enters a psychological space where his deepest fears and insecurities manifest as surreal imagery. This isn't played for laughs. It's genuinely trippy in a way that feels closer to experimental film than sitcom. A giant tortoise appears and speaks to Homer with Marge's voice, but his face keeps shifting and distorting. Homer encounters a massive butterfly that attacks him, its wings covered in hypnotic patterns. The desert itself seems alive, breathing and pulsing with colors that shouldn't exist. Everything familiar becomes alien and threatening. Then Homer meets the space coyote, voiced by Johnny Cash. The coyote speaks in riddles and forces Homer to confront his relationship with Marge, his sense of identity, his purpose in life. The spiritual guide isn't comforting. It's cryptic and unsettling, pushing Homer toward truths he doesn't want to face. The most disturbing visuals come when Homer sees distorted versions of his family and friends. Marge appears with multiple eyes. Bart's face ripples and stretches impossibly. These aren't cute cartoon exaggerations. They're genuinely grotesque, the kind of imagery you'd see in a horror film about losing your grip on reality. The people Homer loves most have become unrecognizable monsters in his altered state. What makes El Viaje Misterioso so psychologically disturbing is how accurately it portrays a bad trip. The paranoia, the inability to trust your own senses, the feeling that reality has become hostile and incomprehensible. People who have experienced hallucinogenic episodes report that this episode captured that experience better than most serious depictions. Homer wanders through this nightmare landscape for what feels like hours. He's completely lost, both physically in the desert and mentally in his own head. The space coyote keeps appearing and disappearing, offering wisdom that makes sense in the moment but seems meaningless when Homer tries to remember it. Nothing is stable. Nothing can be trusted. Eventually, Homer finds his way home, having apparently learned something about himself and his relationship with Marge. But the episode doesn't erase what he experienced. That psychological journey through his own mind, seeing familiar things twisted into horror, confronting uncomfortable truths through surreal metaphor, that's genuinely traumatic. The episode is remarkable for its willingness to fully commit to the hallucinogenic experience rather than just making a few jokes about it. The animation team created genuinely unsettling imagery that wouldn't feel out of place in an art film about mental breakdown. It's beautiful and horrifying simultaneously, which is exactly what makes it so effective and so disturbing. From individual psychological horror, Itchy and Scratchy Land expands the nightmare to a full-scale robot uprising that turns family entertainment into survival horror. The Simpson family goes on vacation when the producers of Itchy and Scratchy open up a theme park in the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land. In a riff on Westworld, the cyborgs that populate the park turn on the guests. After causing mischief and mayhem during their visit, the Simpsons are left behind when the survivors flee in helicopters. The episode primarily parodies Westworld, but the red-eyed robotic terror skews closer to the Terminator. Picture this. You're at a theme park designed for family fun, surrounded by cartoon characters come to life. Then the sun sets, and every single robot in the park simultaneously decides to kill all the humans. That's the premise of Itchy and Scratchy Land, and it's legitimately terrifying. The park itself is designed to be the happiest place on Earth. There are rides, attractions, parades, and hundreds of animatronic characters from the ultra-violent Itchy and Scratchy cartoons. The irony is intentional. These robots are programmed to entertain families during the day by reenacting brutal cartoon violence. But at night, something goes wrong with their programming. The malfunction happens without warning. One minute the robots are performing their scripted routines, the next their eyes turn red and they start attacking guests. Not pretend attacking, actually trying to kill people. The mouse and cat robots, which moments ago were amusing children, are now hunting them with genuine murderous intent. What makes this genuinely scary is how the episode treats the robot uprising seriously. This isn't slapstick where characters bounce back from injuries. People are running for their lives, genuinely afraid, as hundreds of metal killing machines pursue them through the darkened park. The atmosphere shifts from family comedy to survival horror. The Simpsons end up trapped in the park after hours. Everyone else has evacuated by helicopter, but the family is still inside when the full robot army activates. They're surrounded by machines that want them dead, with no way to call for help and no clear escape route. The isolation is complete. Homer and Bart discover that camera flashes temporarily disable the robots, so they have to fight their way through hordes of killer machines using disposable cameras as weapons. It's absurd, but the episode plays it completely straight. The stakes feel real. If they run out of film, they die. The scene where they're backed into a corner, dozens of red-eyed robots closing in from all sides, is genuinely tense. The robots move with mechanical precision, their programming corrupt, but their bodies still functioning perfectly. They're tireless, fearless, and completely focused on their new objective: kill all humans. The family barricades themselves in a building, and the robots start breaking through the walls. Metal hands punching through barriers, red eyes glowing in the darkness, electronic voices declaring their intent to destroy. It's genuinely frightening imagery for a family sitcom. What makes Itchy and Scratchy Land disturbing is how it taps into real fears about technology and automation. These aren't supernatural monsters or alien invaders. They're malfunctioning machines, the kind of technology that exists in the real world. The episode aired in 1994, years before artificial intelligence became a mainstream concern, but it predicted exactly what people would fear about robots gaining autonomy. The episode ends with the family escaping and the park claiming it's the best vacation ever despite the attempted murder. But that dark humor doesn't erase the horror of what happened. A technological system designed to entertain families malfunctioned and tried to commit mass murder. That's not a fantasy scenario. That's a plausible nightmare that becomes more relevant every year. The robot uprising shows technology turned hostile. But the Springfield Files prove sometimes the most terrifying encounters are with things we can't explain at all. The Simpsons meets the X-Files in Season 8's The Springfield Files. When Mulder and Scully came to Springfield to investigate a possible alien sighting, it resulted in one of the most successful crossovers in television history, because it exemplifies the best of both shows. The Springfield Files is as wacky and hilarious as the average Simpsons episode, but it's also as spooky, otherworldly, and genuinely unnerving as the average X-Files episode. Homer encounters what appears to be an alien in the woods one night while walking home drunk. The creature is glowing, speaks in an otherworldly voice, and moves in ways that defy physics. Homer is genuinely terrified, and the audience sees enough of the creature to understand why. The design is unsettling, and the way it's filmed creates authentic dread. The episode maintains tension throughout, even as it delivers comedy. You're never quite sure if this is real supernatural horror or elaborate misdirection. That uncertainty makes every scene more effective. And there you have it. The Simpsons meets the X-Files in Season 8's The Springfield Files. When Mulder and Scully came to Springfield to investigate a possible alien sighting, it resulted in one of the most successful crossovers in television history, because it exemplifies the best of both shows. The Springfield Files is as wacky and hilarious as the average Simpsons episode, but it's also as spooky, otherworldly, and genuinely unnerving as the average X-Files episode. Homer walks home from Moe's Tavern late one night, cutting through the woods to save time. He's drunk, singing to himself when he sees something in the clearing ahead. A glowing figure, thin and otherworldly, with massive eyes and an elongated head. The creature speaks in a haunting voice, its words echoing unnaturally. Homer is terrified and runs. The next day, nobody believes him. His family thinks he was drunk and hallucinating. The town mocks him, but Homer knows what he saw was real. The fear in his voice when he describes the encounter feels genuine, not played for laughs. He saw something in those woods that shouldn't exist, and it shook him. FBI agents Mulder and Scully arrive to investigate, perfectly in character. Mulder believes Homer immediately, seeing this as potential proof of extraterrestrial life. Scully is skeptical, looking for rational explanations. Their presence adds legitimacy to Homer's claims while also raising the stakes. If the FBI is taking this seriously, maybe there really is something dangerous in Springfield. What makes this episode genuinely unnerving is how it borrows the X-Files visual style. The woods are shot in darkness with dramatic lighting. Strange sounds echo through the trees. When characters venture into the forest at night, the atmosphere is pure horror. You expect something to jump out at any moment. The creature appears multiple times throughout the episode, and each appearance is designed to be frightening. The glowing intensifies. The voice becomes more distorted. Its movements seem wrong, not quite human, but not quite anything else. The animators captured that uncanny valley effect perfectly, creating something that feels genuinely alien. Homer becomes increasingly paranoid. He can't sleep, constantly watching the woods, jumping at every sound. His family's disbelief isolates him. He knows the truth but can't prove it, can't make anyone understand. That psychological isolation, that feeling of being the only one who sees the danger, is classic horror. The episode builds to a confrontation in the woods. Homer, Mulder, and half the town venture into the forest at night to find proof. The tension is incredible. Every shadow could be the alien. Every sound could signal its approach. The X-Files theme music plays, adding to the atmosphere of dread. When the alien finally appears before the crowd, it's a spectacular moment of horror. The creature emerges from the darkness, glowing brighter than before, and everyone screams. Then it speaks, and the mystery unravels in the most Simpsons way possible. The alien is Mr. Burns, who's been receiving medical treatments that make him glow. His frail body and bizarre posture, combined with the experimental drugs, created the appearance of an extraterrestrial. But here's what makes the reveal still unsettling. Burns looks genuinely alien in that state. The treatments have transformed him into something barely human. His voice is distorted, his movements are wrong, his appearance is nightmarish. The episode explains away the supernatural, but what's left is somehow worse. A human who's become so physically corrupted by medical science that he's indistinguishable from a monster. The Springfield Files works because it commits fully to being frightening before revealing the truth. Those moments of genuine fear don't disappear just because there's a logical explanation. Homer's terror was real. The creature was real, even if it wasn't an alien. Sometimes the truth is just as disturbing as the mystery. Speaking of disturbing truths, The Frying Game takes reality television to its darkest extreme, with Homer and Marge facing actual execution as entertainment. Season 13's The Frying Game has a very disturbing storyline followed by a very shocking twist. Homer and Marge are guilt-tripped into becoming an elderly lady's personal servants, then get framed for her murder. They're sentenced to the death penalty and get taken to the electric chair with seemingly no way out. And then the whole thing turns out to be an episode of an elaborate hidden camera reality show called Frame Up, hosted by Carmen Electra. The episode begins innocently. Homer accidentally injures an endangered species on their property, and as punishment, he and Marge must perform community service. They're assigned to help an elderly woman named Mrs. Bellamy with household tasks. She seems sweet at first, thanking them for their help and offering them lemonade, but Mrs. Bellamy quickly reveals herself as manipulative and cruel. She guilt-trips Homer and Marge into doing increasingly difficult and demeaning tasks. They're essentially enslaved, working endless hours, scrubbing floors, trimming hedges, and being verbally abused. When they try to leave, she manipulates them into staying, playing on their guilt and good nature. The servitude goes on for weeks. Homer and Marge are exhausted, broken down, trapped in a situation they can't escape. Then one day, they arrive to find Mrs. Bellamy dead, apparently murdered, and Homer and Marge are immediately blamed. The trial is a nightmare. All the evidence points to them. Their fingerprints are everywhere in the house. They had means, motive, and opportunity. The jury finds them guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge sentences them both to death by electric chair. Not prison. Death. What makes this genuinely disturbing is watching Homer and Marge process their situation. They're innocent people about to be executed for a crime they didn't commit. The episode shows them saying goodbye to their children, preparing for death, accepting that they're going to die. These aren't abstract consequences. These feel real. The death row scenes are played completely straight. Homer and Marge are in separate cells, able to talk but not touch. They have their last meal. The warden explains the execution process in detail. Guards escort them to the electric chair. This isn't satirical or exaggerated. It's a realistic depiction of capital punishment, and it's horrifying. They strap Homer into the electric chair first while Marge watches. She's screaming, begging them to stop, but nobody listens. The executioner places his hand on the switch. This is the moment. They're actually going to kill Homer Simpson on screen. The tension is unbearable. Then Carmen Electra appears and reveals it's all been a reality show. Hidden cameras everywhere. Mrs. Bellamy is alive. The trial was fake. The death row was a set. Frame Up pranks innocent people by making them think they're going to die for crimes they didn't commit. And this is presented as entertainment. Here's what makes the twist somehow more disturbing than if it had been real. Someone designed this elaborate psychological torture as entertainment. They traumatized Homer and Marge, made them say goodbye to their children, brought them to the brink of execution, all for ratings. The cruelty is intentional and calculated. Homer and Marge's reactions are what you'd expect. They're furious, traumatized, violated. They just experienced the worst moments of their lives as part of someone else's game. The show tries to play this for laughs, but there's nothing funny about it. This is genuine psychological abuse disguised as reality television. The frying game is disturbing because it takes actual anxieties about the justice system, wrongful convictions, and death penalty, and combines them with anxieties about reality television exploitation. The episode aired in 2002 when reality TV was exploding in popularity, and it predicted how far these shows might go in pursuit of drama and ratings. From false executions, we moved to Treehouse of Horror 5's Time and Punishment, where Homer accidentally creates reality itself, becoming a house of horrors. Featuring perhaps the only but surely the greatest toaster jump scare ever, Time and Punishment sees Homer traveling back and forth in time. Whenever he changes something in the dinosaur age, present-day Springfield is altered in a significantly unnerving fashion. The episode finishes things with all the teachers at Springfield Elementary eating all the kids, another spine-tingling concept. Along with the Frankenstein-esque couch gag and the disgusting results of a fog, this episode leans pretty hard into the Halloween vibe. Homer's toaster breaks and transforms into a time machine. When he sits down for breakfast, he's suddenly transported to the age of dinosaurs. It's absurd, but the episode commits to the concept completely. Homer realizes he can change the past, but he doesn't understand the consequences. He accidentally kills a mosquito, just one tiny insect. When he returns to the present, everything is different. Ned Flanders is the unquestioned lord and master of the world. Everyone speaks in a strange, formal way. The entire social structure has changed because Homer stepped on one bug millions of years ago. This is where Time and Punishment becomes genuinely unsettling. Homer keeps trying to fix things, but every trip makes reality worse. He returns to find his family transformed into grotesque giants. He comes back to a world where everyone's tongue hangs out of their mouth and they eat by grabbing food with their tongues. Each reality is wronger than the last. The animation in these alternate realities is deliberately disturbing. Familiar characters look almost right, but fundamentally wrong. It's uncanny valley horror, where you recognize the people, but they have been corrupted in subtle ways that make them monstrous. The show usually works hard to keep character designs consistent, but here they violate that rule intentionally to create unease. What makes this segment truly frightening is Homer's helplessness. He can't control what changes. He can't predict what each timeline will bring. He's trapped in a cycle of making things worse while trying to make them better. Every attempt to fix the damage creates new horrors. The darkest timeline shows Springfield Elementary as a place where teachers hunt and eat students. It's played for dark comedy, but the imagery is genuinely disturbing. Children running for their lives while their teachers chase them with knives and forks. This is institutional horror, where the people meant to protect you want to consume you. Homer finally gives up and settles for a reality that's close enough to his original one. Everything seems fine except his family eats with lizard tongues. He accepts this horror as the best he can do. That resignation, that acceptance of a corrupted reality because you can't find your way back to the real one is existentially terrifying. Time and Punishment works because it explores the horror of losing your grip on reality itself. Not hallucinating, not being confused. Actually watching reality change around you, knowing it's wrong, but being unable to fix it. That's a nightmare that stays with you. Where time travel corrupts reality, Nightmare Cafeteria shows corruption in an even more visceral way. Teachers literally consuming their students. Nightmare Cafeteria from Treehouse of Horror 5 takes the joke about terrible school cafeteria food and twists it into literal cannibalism. When Springfield Elementary runs out of detention space and cafeteria food simultaneously, Principal Skinner and the teachers solve both problems by cooking and serving the detention students to the rest of the school. And the episode plays this completely straight, making it one of the darkest segments in Simpsons history. The setup is brilliant in its simplicity. Too many students in detention, not enough food in the cafeteria. Lunch Lady Doris makes an offhand comment about the solution being obvious. Then the next day, students start disappearing, and the cafeteria suddenly has meat. Bart notices first. His classmates are vanishing one by one, always the troublemakers, always kids who were sent to detention. When he investigates, he discovers the horrifying truth. The teachers are killing students and turning them into food, not metaphorically, literally murdering children and serving them to other children. What makes Nightmare Cafeteria genuinely disturbing is how enthusiastically the teachers embrace this solution. They're not reluctant or guilt-ridden, they're excited. Principal Skinner discusses cooking methods with Lunch Lady Doris. They debate seasoning and preparation. These are adults treating child murder as a culinary challenge. The imagery is nightmare fuel. Students being led to the cafeteria kitchen, the industrial meat grinder, Lunch Lady Doris's excited face as she prepares her ingredients, the other students unknowingly eating their classmates. Every element is designed to be as disturbing as possible while still maintaining the show's animation style. Lisa and Bart realize they're next. They're chronic troublemakers, which means that they're prime targets for the menu. They try to warn other students, but nobody believes them. The adults have been careful to take only students who won't be missed immediately. The system is running smoothly. The chase sequence through the school is pure horror. Bart and Lisa running through hallways while teachers pursue them with cooking implements. Mrs. Crabapple wielding a cleaver. Groundskeeper Willie with his garden tools. These authority figures. People who are supposed to protect children, hunting them like animals for slaughter. They corner Bart and Lisa in the cafeteria. There's no escape. The teachers close in, discussing how they'll prepare them. Bart will be a good roast. Lisa might work better as a stew. The conversation is casual, cheerful even. They're not monsters who've lost their humanity. They're monsters who found a practical solution to two problems. The segment ends with Bart waking up. It was all a nightmare. But then Willie appears and starts attacking the family with his rake. The nightmare wasn't over. It just changed form. That final twist turns the relief into continued horror, suggesting that maybe the cannibalism was real after all, just manifesting differently. Nightmare Cafeteria is disturbing because it takes the trusted adult figures in children's lives and makes them predators. Teachers, principals, cafeteria workers, all the people kids are taught to trust. And it shows these authority figures not just failing in their duty, but actively hunting children. That's primal fear that works on kids and adults for different but equally effective reasons. If teachers hunting students corrupts one kind of safety, Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace corrupts another, the safety of sleep itself. Groundskeeper Willie stood in as Freddy Krueger in the spoof of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And although the segment is filled with killer gags, his villain form is authentically creepy. Whether it's Willie's glowing eyes as he swears revenge on the town's parents or his final form as a spider-human hybrid, this spoof of Freddy Krueger is just creepy enough to scare younger viewers. The premise is classic Nightmare on Elm Street. Willie dies in a furnace accident while all the parents watch and do nothing. They were having a parent-teacher conference and Willie caught fire, but nobody helped because they didn't want to miss the meeting. Willie burns to death, screaming for help that never comes. That's genuinely dark backstory for a comedy segment. Willie returns as a dream demon, killing children in their nightmares to punish the parents for letting him die. What makes this effective is how seriously the episode treats the dream logic. When Willie kills you in a dream, you die in reality. Martin is the first victim, attacked in a dream about his own essay and found dead in bed with claw marks across his face. The dream sequences are genuinely unnerving. Willie appears with glowing eyes and extended claws made from his garden rake. His Scottish accent becomes menacing instead of comedic. He stalks through surreal dreamscapes that shift and change, making escape impossible. The animation is fluid and strange. capturing that nightmare quality where nothing quite makes sense. Bart's nightmare is particularly effective. He's in school, but everything is wrong. The hallways are endless. The classroom is distorted. Willie appears from shadows, his form flickering and changing. Bart runs but gets nowhere, trapped in the circular logic of dream geography. It's claustrophobic and disorienting. Lisa figures out they can fight back by not being afraid, the classic dream demon weakness. But Willie adapts. He becomes more aggressive, more creative with his attacks. The episode shows him transforming into different monstrous forms, each more disturbing than the last. The final battle takes place in a nightmare shared by all the Springfield children. Willie has grown massive, a towering monster with multiple arms and grotesque features. He's no longer just Willie with claws. He's become a true nightmare creature, something that barely resembles the janitor he once was. When Willie transforms into a giant spider with human features, the segment crosses into pure body horror. His face is recognizable but wrong, attached to an arachnid body that moves in sickening ways. This isn't kid-friendly anymore. This is genuinely disturbing imagery that wouldn't be out of place in an actual horror film. The kids defeat Willie using dream logic, but the episode doesn't end cleanly. Even after winning, the atmosphere of menace remains. The suggestion lingers that nightmares can return, that victory in dreams is never permanent. Sleep, which should be safe, has been corrupted into a battleground. Nightmare on Evergreen Terrace works because Willie is legitimately frightening in this role. The combination of his distinctive character design, the dream demon concept, and genuinely creepy animation create something that scared actual children when it aired. Some parents complained the segment was too intense for young viewers, which proves how effectively it captured horror. Where Willie attacks in dreams, The Thing and I reveals horror was hiding in plain sight in the Simpson home all along. In The Thing and I, the first segment from Season 8, Episode 1, Treehouse of Horror 7, Homer and Marge admit that Bart was secretly born with an evil twin named Hugo. Hugo's first appearance in The Simpsons is genuinely creepy as he takes Bart hostage and attempts to reattach himself to his former conjoined twin. The ending has arguably the best twist of all the TOH segments. Strange noises have been coming from the attic for years. Bart and Lisa hear shuffling, chains rattling, inhuman sounds. Whenever they ask, their parents change the subject and lock them out of certain areas of the house. Something is being kept secret. Something is being hidden away. One night, Bart sneaks into the attic and discovers the truth. Chained to a bed is a deformed creature that looks almost human but wrong. Its body is twisted, its face is grotesque, and it's covered in scars from years of confinement. When the creature sees Bart, it speaks, and Bart recognizes something familiar in its eyes. This is Hugo, Bart's conjoined twin who was separated at birth and hidden in the attic ever since. The family has been keeping Hugo prisoner for 10 years, chained up and fed through a slot in the floor. Homer and Marge explain casually, like this is a reasonable solution to having a deformed child. They didn't want to deal with the medical challenges, so they just locked him away. Think about the horror of Hugo's existence. Born attached to his brother, surgically separated, then immediately imprisoned. He spent his entire life in one small attic room, listening to his family live normal lives below him. He could hear Bart playing, going to school, having friends. Hugo had none of that. Just chains and darkness and the occasional bucket of fish heads thrown up for dinner. What makes this genuinely disturbing is the family's casual cruelty. Doctor, Hibbert explains that one twin would be evil and one would be good, so they chose to keep the one with fewer deformities and lock away the other. They made this choice when the twins were infants and never reconsidered. Hugo has been a prisoner his entire life because of a decision made by adults when he was too young to have any say. Hugo's plan is simple and tragic. He wants to be whole again. He wants to reattach himself to Bart, to return to how they were before the separation. He's not trying to kill Bart out of malice. He just wants to undo the surgery that destroyed his life. His evil is born from abandonment and isolation, not inherent wickedness. The episode plays this for comedy, but the underlying horror is inescapable. A child was imprisoned and dehumanized by his own family for a decade. When he finally escapes, he's treated as a monster rather than a victim. The Simpsons hunt him through the house, trying to recapture him, never questioning whether imprisoning him was wrong in the first place. Then comes the twist. Doctor Hibbert reveals he attached the wrong twin. Bart was actually the evil one. Hugo was good all along. They kept the wrong child and imprisoned the innocent one. For 10 years, they tortured an innocent child while treating the evil twin as their beloved son. The episode ends with Bart chained in the attic and Hugo joining the family downstairs. The switch is presented as justice, but it's really just more cruelty. Now Bart will experience what Hugo did. The cycle of abuse continues rather than ending. The Thing and I is disturbing because it shows family horror at its worst. Parents who'd rather imprison a child than care for him. Siblings who never knew each other existed. And the cruel revelation that they punished the wrong person all along, making their decade of abuse even more meaningless. While Hugo suffered from his family's cruelty, Homer Simpson makes a deal that trades his very soul for temporary satisfaction. For the most part, Season 5, Episode 5, Treehouse of Horror 4 isn't too dark. The revelation that Flanders as the devil is inspired and casting Mr. Burns as Dracula works perfectly. But the segment The Devil and Homer Simpson stands out for its depiction of hell and damnation as real, immediate threats that feel genuinely unsettling despite the comedy. Homer sells his soul for a donut. That's the setup. He makes an offhand deal with the devil, who appears as Ned Flanders in a red suit with horns. 1 donut in exchange for his eternal soul. Homer agrees immediately without thinking about consequences because that's Homer. But then the donut appears and the deal becomes real. What makes this disturbing is watching Homer realize he's actually going to hell. Not theoretical hell. Not maybe hell. Actual, literal hell where he'll be tortured forever. The devil Flanders shows up to collect, and Homer can't escape or negotiate or take it back. The contract is binding. The trial scene in hell is simultaneously funny and frightening. Homer stands before a demonic jury while Satan argues for his soul. The judge is a terrifying demon sitting on a throne made of bones. The courtroom is filled with suffering souls and fire. This isn't metaphorical punishment. This is a place where people experience physical agony for eternity. Marge presents Homer's wedding photos as evidence that he already gave his soul to her. The contract stipulates that in return for her hand in marriage, Homer gave her his entire soul. This technically invalidates the devil's claim since Homer didn't own his soul anymore when he sold it for the donut. The jury deliberates and finds a technicality in Marge's favor. Homer is freed from hell, but the devil gets his revenge anyway. As Homer leaves, Flanders curses him with a transformation. Homer wakes up the next morning with a giant donut for a head. The donut head curse is played for comedy, but think about what it means. Homer has been permanently transformed as punishment for trying to escape damnation. His head is food now. He can't remove it. It's not a costume or illusion. His actual human head has been replaced with pastry. People literally bite chunks out of his head throughout the day. Homer's family learns to live with his donut head. They bite pieces off when they're hungry. Homer can't stop them because it's attached to his body. He feels the bites, feels pieces of himself being consumed. But there's nothing he can do. That's genuinely disturbing body horror hiding under cartoon logic. What makes The Devil and Homer Simpson unsettling is how it presents supernatural punishment as matter-of-fact reality. Hell exists. Souls can be bought and sold. Contracts with demons are legally binding. Curses are permanent. None of this is questioned or revealed as fantasy. It's just how the world works in this episode. The segment also raises uncomfortable questions about Homer's judgment and priorities. He traded eternal salvation for temporary satisfaction. That's the deal people make with addiction, with short-term pleasure over long-term consequences. The episode literalizes that transaction and shows how devastating it can be. Even after escaping hell, Homer's marked forever. The donut head is a constant reminder of his deal with the devil and how close he came to eternal damnation. Every time someone bites his head, he's experiencing a consequence of that choice. The punishment isn't over. It's just changed form. Treehouse of Horror 8's The H Omega Man segment sees Homer surviving a nuclear apocalypse that kills everyone in Springfield except his family. The post-apocalyptic setting is played for laughs initially, but the underlying horror of being alone in a dead world slowly builds throughout the segment. What starts as Homer enjoying the lack of responsibilities becomes increasingly disturbing. as he realizes the implications of survivors' guilt and isolation. Springfield is destroyed by a nuclear blast while Homer is inside a bomb shelter he built in a panic. When he emerges, the city is a radioactive wasteland. Buildings are destroyed, the sky is an unnatural color, and there's no sign of life anywhere. Homer walks through empty streets calling for survivors. Nobody answers. At first, Homer celebrates. No work, no rules, no people telling him what to do. He raids stores, drives recklessly, does whatever he wants. But the joy is hollow. There's nobody to share it with, nobody to react to his antics. He's completely alone. Then Homer discovers his family survived in the house. Bart, Lisa, and Maggie are alive but mutated by radiation. They're grotesque, their bodies twisted and deformed. Marge survived too, but has also been changed by the nuclear fallout. They're his family but wrong, corrupted versions of the people he loves. What makes this genuinely disturbing is Homer's reaction. He's relieved they're alive but horrified by what they've become. They still have their personalities, but their bodies are monstrous. How do you hug your children when they become physically alien? How do you maintain family bonds when everyone looks like a creature from a nightmare? The rest of Springfield's population also survived, but they're even more mutated. Everyone in town has been transformed into hostile, aggressive mutants who blame Homer for the disaster. They form a mob and hunt him through the ruins, trying to kill him for the destruction his carelessness caused. Homer takes refuge in his house while mutant versions of his friends and neighbors surround the building. They're not mindless zombies. They're still themselves mentally, just twisted physically and united in their rage at Homer. Ned Flanders, still religious but now monstrous, leads the charge. Moe, Barney, Lenny, Carl, everyone Homer knew wants him dead. The segment plays this scenario for dark comedy, but the horror is real. Homer caused the apocalypse through stupidity and now has to face the consequences. Everyone he knows has been transformed into something terrible, and it's his fault. That guilt, combined with the isolation and constant threat, creates a psychological horror that transcends the silly premise. Eventually, Homer's mutant family helps him fight off the mob, but the victory is empty. Springfield is still destroyed. Everyone is still mutated. There's no going back to normal. This is their life now, surviving in ruins, looking like monsters, forever marked by the disaster Homer caused. The H-Omega Man works because it takes the fantasy of being the last person alive and reveals it as a nightmare. Survivors of apocalypse don't get freedom. They get isolation, guilt, and the constant reminder of what they've lost. Homer's post-apocalyptic paradise becomes a prison where he's surrounded by evidence of his mistakes. From apocalypse created by human error, we return to where Halloween episodes began with Bad Dream House, showing a building that's evil all on its own. The very first Treehouse of Horror episode featured Bad Dream House, where the Simpsons move into a beautiful mansion only to discover it's genuinely haunted and actively trying to kill them. What makes this segment particularly effective is how seriously it takes the haunted house concept before the darkly comedic ending. The house has an evil consciousness that manifests through the environment itself. The Simpsons get an incredible deal on a gorgeous mansion. Beautiful architecture, spacious rooms, perfect location. Homer doesn't question why it's so cheap. They move in immediately. Then strange things start happening. Objects move on their own. Doors slam shut. Lights flicker. The walls bleed. The house isn't just creepy, it's actively malevolent. Lisa senses at first that feeling of being watched by something hostile. The house has a presence, and that presence wants them dead. The evil manifests more directly as the episode continues. The house tries to make the family kill each other. Homer grabs an axe and starts chasing his family through the halls, possessed by the building's influence. The children turn on each other. Marge becomes violent. This isn't subtle psychological manipulation. This is the house forcing them toward a murder. What makes Bad Dream House genuinely unsettling is the idea of environmental evil. The threat isn't a person or creature they can fight or escape. It's the building itself. The walls, the floors, the air. Everything around them is hostile. There's no safe place to hide because hiding means staying inside, and inside is what wants to kill them. The house eventually speaks to them directly through walls that bleed messages. It explains its history. Multiple families have died here. The house made them all kill each other. It feeds on violence and death. The Simpsons are just the latest victims in a long line of families destroyed by this building. Marge suggests they leave, but Homer refuses. He got a good deal on the house, and he's not giving it up. That casual stubbornness in the face of supernatural evil is classic Homer. His family is in mortal danger, but he won't leave because of his pride and cheapness. The house escalates its attacks. Furniture attacks them. The walls close in. The basement becomes a portal to hell, with tentacles reaching out to drag them down. This isn't subtle haunting anymore. This is overt warfare between the building and its occupants. Then comes the twist. Marge has an idea. Instead of fighting or fleeing, the family simply decides to ignore the house. They sit on the couch and refuse to react to anything. The house throws everything at them. Objects flying, walls bleeding, demonic voices screaming. But the Simpsons just sit there calmly. Unable to frighten them, unable to feed on their fear, the house gives up. It literally self-destructs rather than deal with this family anymore. The building explodes, unable to handle tenants who won't be scared. The Simpsons walk away from the rubble, having destroyed evil through sheer stubborn indifference. Bad Dream House works because it establishes the Treehouse of Horror template. Take horror concepts seriously, build genuine tension, then resolve them in unexpected ways that fit the characters. The house is legitimately threatening until it meets a family too dysfunctional to be properly frightened. The segment also plays on primal fears about home. Your house should be safe. It should protect you. But what if the building itself is the threat? What if you can't trust the walls around you? That violation of domestic safety is horror that resonates with everyone. If houses can be evil, objects can too, as Clown Without Pity proves with its demonic doll. The first segment of Treehouse of Horror 3 introduces the evil Krusty doll. And although this episode ranks toward the end of scarier segments because it's jam-packed with jokes and ends on a light note, there are genuinely harrowing moments. The evil vendor who sold Homer the doll and Krusty popping out from behind the couch with a knife create authentic jump scares. Homer forgets Bart's birthday. Again, he's a terrible father who can't remember important dates, so he rushes to a creepy shop to find a last-minute present. The store is filled with cursed objects, mystical artifacts, and warnings about everything being dangerous. Homer doesn't care. He needs something fast. He buys a talking Krusty the Clown doll. The shopkeeper warns him the doll is cursed, but Homer ignores him like he ignores all warnings. He brings it home and gives it to Bart, who's thrilled. Finally, his dad got him something he actually wanted. The doll talks, moves, seems perfect. Then night comes and the doll's true nature reveals itself. Krusty comes alive with murder in his eyes. He's not a cute toy anymore. He's a weapon with sentience and malice. The doll stalks Homer through the house, wielding various weapons, trying to kill him with genuine determination. What makes the Krusty doll frightening is how seriously the episode plays his attempts. He's not incompetent or silly. He's small but effective, using his size to hide and ambush. He comes at Homer with knives, gets into the bathroom, while Homer's vulnerable appears from unexpected places. This is a predator hunting prey just in miniature. Homer tries to convince his family the doll is alive, but Krusty always stops moving when others are watching. Classic evil doll behavior. He's strategic, patient, waiting for Homer to be alone before attacking. The psychological warfare is as effective as the physical danger. The attacks escalate. Krusty sets traps, sabotages the house, tries increasingly creative methods of murder. Homer becomes paranoid, jumping at every sound, never feeling safe. Even in his own home, even surrounded by family, he knows the doll is coming for him. Marge finally witnesses one of the attacks and believes Homer. They examine the doll and discover a switch on its back. It's set to evil. When they switch it to good, the doll's personality changes instantly. He becomes friendly and helpful, apologizing for trying to murder Homer. The curse was just a manufacturing defect. The resolution is comedic, but it doesn't erase the terror of being hunted by an object that shouldn't be alive. The episode taps into primal fears about dolls and toys, objects that look almost human but aren't quite right. When they move on their own, when they reveal malicious intent, the wrongness triggers deep psychological horror. Clown Without Pity also plays with the idea that danger can come from places you'd never suspect. A child's toy, a birthday present, something meant to bring joy. When those safe, wholesome objects become threats, it violates expectations in a deeply unsettling way. You can't trust anything if a birthday present wants to kill you. The shopkeeper warning Homer about curses and being ignored is classic horror setup. Someone who knows better tries to prevent disaster, but they're dismissed by people who think they know better. Then the curse unfolds exactly as warned, and the victim has nobody to blame but themselves. From cursed objects to mysterious discoveries, Lisa the skeptic explores what happens when science and faith collide over bones that might be angel or might be horror. Lisa the skeptic treads the line between magical realism and mysticism as what appears to be an angel skeleton is discovered at a construction site. This episode's second half is steeped in the tone of a dark though hilarious mystery, and easily makes the ranks as one of the most suspenseful and macabre episodes. The skeleton becomes a focal point for Springfield's religious fervor and Lisa's scientific skepticism, creating genuine tension about whether supernatural forces are at work. A new shopping mall is being built on the outskirts of Springfield. During excavation, workers discover what appears to be a skeleton with wings. The bones look human but have these massive wing structures extending from the shoulder blades. Lisa finds it while participating in an archaeological dig, and immediately the town divides into believers and skeptics. Springfield's religious population declares it's an angel, proof of divine existence. They gather around the skeleton with reverence and fear, treating it as a holy relic. Some claim to see it move, to hear it speak, to witness miracles in its presence. The fervor builds rapidly into something approaching mass hysteria. Lisa remains skeptical. She wants carbon dating, scientific analysis, rational explanation, but the believers won't allow it. They've decided what the skeleton is, and no amount of evidence will change their minds. The conflict becomes personal as Lisa faces hostility from neighbors who see her skepticism as blasphemy. What makes this genuinely unsettling is watching the town transform. People become aggressive in their belief. They form mobs. They threaten anyone who questions the skeleton's divine nature. Springfield descends into religious mania, with a skeleton at the center like some dark idol demanding worship. The skeleton itself is visualized in ways that are simultaneously beautiful and disturbing. The animation shows it bathed in ethereal light, but there's something wrong about it. The bones are positioned oddly. The wings look organic, but also alien. Whether it's angel or something else, it's definitely not normal. Strange occurrences happen around the skeleton. Weather anomalies, unexplained phenomena. The episode never confirms whether these are supernatural events or coincidence, which makes them more unsettling. Lisa's scientific worldview is challenged by things she can't easily explain, creating doubt where there should be certainty. The mystery deepens when the skeleton disappears. Someone or something has taken it. The town goes into panic. Was it raptured? Stolen? Did it walk away on its own? Every possibility is horrifying in different ways. Either supernatural forces are real and active, or someone in Springfield is manipulating religious belief for unknown purposes. Lisa investigates and tracks the skeleton to the new mall. The whole thing was an elaborate publicity stunt. The skeleton was planted by the mall developer to generate attention. The angel was advertising. The entire religious awakening was manufactured to sell consumer goods. The revelation is darkly satirical, but it doesn't erase the horror of what happened. The town's willingness to abandon reason, to threaten skeptics, to descend into mob mentality, that was real, even if the angel wasn't. Lisa the skeptic shows how easily people can be manipulated through their beliefs, how faith can be weaponized, how fear of the unknown makes people dangerous. What's particularly disturbing is that nobody really learns anything. The mall opened successfully. People shopped there despite knowing they were deceived. The skeleton controversy is forgotten. Springfield proved itself capable of religious violence over fake bones, and that capability doesn't disappear just because this specific threat was revealed as false. The episode treats its subject matter with surprising weight. The questions it raises about belief, skepticism, manipulation, and mob mentality are genuinely heavy for a sitcom. Lisa's isolation as the only person insisting on evidence feels real and frightening, where being right doesn't protect you when everyone around you has decided you're wrong. From manufactured religious horror to real home invasion terror, Halloween of Horror brings genuine danger into the Simpson house without any supernatural elements at all. There is plenty of spooky imagery throughout Halloween of Horror, but Barney Gumbel's unconventional costume might be the scariest thing here. Overall, Halloween of Horror manages to keep the tone friendly enough for the average scaredy cat to arrive at what is far and away the creepiest section, Maggie's wordless post-credit scene. The season 27 episode stands out because unlike the Treehouse of Horror specials, this is canon. The danger is real and permanent. The Simpson family goes to Krusty Land's Halloween Horror Night. It's meant to be fun, controlled scares with actors and costumes, but the experience is too intense for Lisa. She's genuinely frightened by the horror decorations, the jump scares, the violent imagery. She has a panic attack and the family has to leave early. Homer feels guilty for taking Lisa somewhere that traumatized her. He tries to make it better by creating a safe Halloween at home. No scary decorations, just fun and friendly autumn themes. Pumpkins with happy faces, cheerful music, nothing frightening. Lisa appreciates the effort and starts to relax. But then Homer accidentally offends some seasonal Halloween employees he encounters at a store. These workers take Halloween seriously. When Homer dismisses their haunted house exhibit as not scary, they take it personally. They decide to teach the Simpsons a lesson about real fear. That night, the workers break into the Simpson house. This isn't playful haunting. This is home invasion by people in terrifying masks, carrying weapons, genuinely trying to frighten the family. The Simpsons are trapped in their own home with masked intruders stalking them through the dark. What makes Halloween of Horror genuinely frightening is how realistic the threat feels. These aren't supernatural monsters or cartoon villains. They're angry people with masks and bad intentions. They know the house layout because they watched the family earlier. They're organized and determined. The family splits up to hide and escape. Homer tries to protect his children while Marge calls for help. But the intruders have cut the phone lines. They've blocked the exits. This was planned. The family is isolated and vulnerable with no way to get help. Lisa, still traumatized from the theme park, now has to face real danger in her own home. The place that's supposed to be safe has been invaded. Her fear isn't entertainment anymore. It's survival. The psychological impact of this experience will last long after the physical danger ends. The home invasion scenes are shot like an actual thriller. Dark hallways, creaking doors, shadowy figures moving through the house. The animation captures genuine suspense and terror. This feels dangerous in a way Simpsons episodes rarely do because there's no reset button. Whatever happens tonight is permanent. Homer confronts the intruders and discovers they're the seasonal workers he insulted. They're not trying to kill anyone, just scare them severely as revenge for being disrespected. But that doesn't make the situation less terrifying. The family didn't know the intruders' intentions. They experienced genuine fear of death. The episode ends with the workers apologizing and leaving. But then comes Maggie's post-credit scene. She's alone in her crib. The house is quiet. Then one of the intruders' masks appears at her window, tapping on the glass. Someone came back. Or maybe someone never left. That final image is pure nightmare fuel. A baby alone with a masked figure at her window. The episode doesn't show what happens next. It just leaves you with that moment of horror and the implication that the night's trauma isn't over. Halloween of Horror is disturbing because it grounds fear in reality. No ghosts, no demons, just people being cruel. Home invasion is a real crime that happens to real families. The episode treats that premise seriously, creating genuine terror rather than playful spookiness. From home invasion, we end with Bart versus Australia, where international conflict proves sometimes the scariest thing is consequences you can't escape from. Bart versus Australia from season 6 shows what happens when one kid's prank escalates into an international incident with genuinely terrifying implications. While this isn't horror in the traditional sense, watching a child face the full weight of a foreign government's legal system and corporal punishment is disturbing in its own right. The episode builds dread as Bart realizes he's going to be physically punished by people he can't reason with or escape from. The premise starts innocently. Bart makes a prank phone call to Australia asking about the direction toilet water spins. It's the kind of harmless mischief Bart does constantly. But this time the call lasts hours and racks up a $900 phone bill. The Australian government wants payment, and when the Simpsons can't or won't pay, it becomes a diplomatic crisis. Australia demands Bart come to their country and face punishment. Not a fine, not community service. A physical punishment called booting, where Bart will be kicked in the buttocks with a giant boot in front of an audience. The Australian government treats this as non-negotiable. The U.S. State Department pressures the Simpsons to comply to maintain diplomatic relations. Think about what this means for Bart. A foreign government is demanding he travel thousands of miles to be physically punished for a phone call. This isn't parental discipline. This is state-sanctioned corporal punishment of a child by a foreign power. The implications are genuinely frightening. The family flies to Australia and the dread builds throughout their visit. Australian officials are polite but firm. Bart will be booted. There's no escape. The appointment is scheduled. The boot is displayed. Everything is proceeding toward Bart being physically struck by government representatives while his family watches. What makes this disturbing is Bart's growing realization that he has no control. At home, Bart usually escapes consequences through luck or intervention. But in Australia, he's subject to their legal system. His parents can't protect him. The U.S. government won't intervene. He's going to experience physical pain and public humiliation, and there's nothing he can do. The booting ceremony approaches. Bart is brought to a public square where a crowd has gathered. The official boot is enormous, a cartoonish weapon designed to cause maximum pain and embarrassment. Bart is positioned. The representative prepares to strike. This is actually happening. At the last second, Bart's fear overcomes his compliance. He runs. This triggers an international incident worse than the original phone call. Australia considers it an insult to their sovereignty. They send the equivalent of their entire military after one fleeing American child. The chase through the embassy is played for comedy, but underneath is real terror. Bart is being hunted by an entire nation because he refused to be beaten. The Australian officials are genuinely angry, genuinely determined to catch him and administer punishment. They're not villains, they're just enforcing their laws, which makes it more unsettling. This is legitimate government authority being used against a child. The family barricades themselves in the U.S. embassy, but they can't stay there forever. The Australian government surrounds the building, waiting. The standoff becomes international news. Bart's prank has escalated into a crisis that could damage relations between two countries. Eventually, a compromise is reached. The U.S. ambassador will boot Bart. One kick, delivered by an American official, satisfies Australia's demand for justice while technically keeping Bart under U.S. protection. Bart agrees because it's his only option. He bends over. The ambassador prepares to kick. But at the moment of impact, Bart moves and the ambassador misses. Bart moons the entire Australian government instead. This final insult enrages Australia so completely that they declare war on the Simpson family. The episode ends with the family fleeing the country while Australia mobilizes against them. What makes Bart versus Australia genuinely unsettling is how it shows the powerlessness of individuals against government systems. Bart is 10 years old. His crime was a stupid phone call. But once the machinery of international law and diplomacy started moving, he couldn't stop it. He was going to be punished regardless of his age, regardless of how disproportionate the response was, regardless of anything except satisfying bureaucratic requirements. The episode also explores how quickly situations can spiral beyond control. One prank becomes a bill. The bill becomes a dispute. The dispute becomes a diplomatic crisis. The crisis becomes an international incident. The incident becomes a mob hunting a child through a foreign country. Each escalation feels inevitable once the previous step completes. The booting itself, while played for comedy, represents real corporal punishment practices that exist in various forms around the world. Children are physically punished by authorities. The episode exaggerates it with a giant boot, but the underlying reality is that some places authorize striking children as legal penalty. That's genuinely disturbing when you think about it outside the cartoon context. Bart's fear throughout the episode feels real. He's cocky at first, assuming everything will work out like it always does. But as he realizes the stakes, genuine terror appears. He's going to be hurt. Publicly. By adults. With government authority. And nobody can save him. That helplessness is the real horror. The ending provides no real resolution. The family escapes, but they've made a permanent enemy. Bart's actions have consequences that can't be undone. He'll never be able to return to Australia. He's caused an international incident that will be remembered. Some mistakes can't be fixed, some situations can't be escaped, and sometimes the fear doesn't end just because you got away. And there you have it. The Simpsons has given us 35 years of entertainment. But hidden within those seasons are episodes that genuinely disturbed viewers, pushed boundaries, and proved animation could tackle seriously dark content. From child abuse to suicide, from cults to cannibalism, from home invasion to international incidents, The Simpsons went places most family shows wouldn't dare. These episodes remind us that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones hiding in plain sight on primetime television. They aired during family viewing hours, reached millions of children, and created genuinely traumatic moments that stayed with viewers for decades. The show's willingness to embrace darkness, to explore horror, to refuse to sanitize difficult topics is part of what made it culturally significant. Whether it's Bart being enslaved in France, Homer causing Frank Grimes' suicide, or Lisa facing home invasion, these episodes prove that animation isn't just for kids. The Simpsons could be genuinely frightening when it wanted to be. And these 26 episodes represent the show at its darkest, most disturbing, most psychologically complex. The horror wasn't always supernatural. Sometimes it was human cruelty. Sometimes it was systemic failure. Sometimes it was the crushing weight of consequences you couldn't escape. But it was always real, always impactful, and always remembered by those who witnessed it.